What can rugby learn from other sports, folks? I don't watch a heck of a lot of sports other than rugby union. I spend a fair bit of my time doing that. But from time to time, I have been known to partake in some other sports. We're going to look at 5 sports other than rugby union that I think have certain aspects that rugby union could learn from. And then, you guys can let us know your thoughts. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying rugby needs to be tinkering with every bloody little thing, thinking the game is broken. I actually think they should tinker less, because I think it's hard for people who don't watch week in, week out to sometimes follow the game with all the changes. But still, got to have an open mind about things. First one I'm going to go with doesn't actually really pertain to the rules of the game, but more the way the game is commentated. And the sport I think they should take a leaf out of is the NRL. That's the rugby league competition in Australia. I used to watch that as a child. Back in the days when rugby union was still amateur, yes, I would watch rugby with my old man. And there was always kind of higher production values with rugby league because it was a professional game. So as a child, I was certainly more attracted to that game. But even to this day, there's certain things that they do well, and I believe part of it is the commentary. Rugby union, for whatever reason, a lot of the time, not all the time, because there's some bloody good commentators out there as well, but a lot of the time seems to employ people who don't actually seem to enjoy watching rugby that much. They like to have a whinge for a lot of things. Some of them like to whinge about certain aspects of the game being boring. I'm mainly looking at New Zealand and Australian commentators for that. I was going to say a different word. Complaining about set piece in particular taking too long. And some of the Northern Hemisphere commentators, I won't single any out, like to really critique the refs as if they are all-knowing commentators. They know the rules so much better than the refs. And when they actually see, oh, actually the ref was right, they just kind of like to, to move along very quickly. Or they like to boast about how the decisions they would have made are so much better than the players on the field, and the players are making the wrong calls. And sometimes they just call the game outright boring. So I don't notice that. I don't watch much NRL, but I just sat there and watched 20 minutes of NRL. And I tell you what, I didn't hear the commentators moaning about the game once. 20 minutes is a very small sample, but some of the words I heard them use within that 20 minutes in a game which was pissing down with rain, they said things like tremendous, having a real crack, desire, absolutely electric, rampaging run, remarkable, what a game we've got on tonight, great fight back, all this kind of stuff. It was all really positive, like you're selling your product pretty well. And I'm not saying if a game is genuinely quite dire that you need to try and sell it hard, because that will be fake. But what I'm saying is, you shouldn't be trying to say that your own product is rubbish in front of all the fans that are watching it. Because if you tell them enough times that it's rubbish, people are going to start thinking it's rubbish. So, yes, I feel like the NRL commentators tend to do a pretty good job. The next sport I'm going to say is the one I got the jersey hanging up in the background for. And that's the NHL, the ice hockey. Never used to watch ice hockey, but I did get into it a few years ago. Have watched it on and off for a few seasons, enough that I know all the teams and I know most of the star players. That's kind of where my level of... I'm a casual fan of ice hockey, put it that way. But there's one rule in ice hockey which I quite like, because it stops fake acting Hollywood guys, and that's their embellishment law. Basically, in ice hockey, because it's a contact sport, if you take a dive like footballers do, or if you just kind of oversell, like if you fall in a more dramatic way, or if you look at the ref like appealing for a call, trying to make a face like you've just been fouled, you're going to get put in the penalty box. You're going to get 2 minutes. Basically, all the embellishment calls go is guy A hits guy B. Illegally, he goes to the box, but guy B tried to sell the shot that he'd just been hit illegally, so he also goes to the box. They tend to go to the box together. So we've already seen it a fair bit in rugby, where you see guys get touched on the face and they look at the ref and they just start making gestures and motions and appealing, or like the Nick White one where he got kind of brushed on the face and just went down clutching like he'd been shot. That kind of nonsense is a slippery slope. I don't want to see it go down the football path. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, the way the NHL does it is not perfect. They don't do it perfectly because sometimes guys get called for embellishment when they weren't really embellishing. They just get whacked and their leg flies up and it looks like they're making a big deal about it, but they're not. So it's not perfect. There's no way of perfectly doing it when guys are going to Hollywood their way through a game. But personally, I would rather the onus kind of be on the guys just to keep things normal and not try to sell stuff and appeal to the ref for those kind of, illegal shots and whatnot, compared to what we get in football, which is guys just absolutely play acting because it's just become an accepted part of the game. So I feel like rugby's got a little bit of a slippery slope in that regard because we do definitely see it more now than 10 years ago where guys, are a bit theatrical to try and get the TMO's attention. So the embellishment one from ice hockey, I kind of like it. What have we got? Another one I'm going to say is from cricket. Now, cricket's got its own issues as well, by no means perfect. And it's a really different game from rugby because it's kind of more like baseball and that it's got the kind of individual battles thing rather than a full-on kind of team-on-team game at all times. But I like cricket's stats, man. I feel like cricket does a really good job of keeping you informed about how good a player is and what you can expect and how the game is going with the numbers they keep putting on the screen. It's not the kind of thing you need to shove down your throat because if you're always talking stats, it gets a bit dry. And rugby, as I said, is not as clear-cut with the stats because it's teams, which is fluid rather than just one-on-one battles. But cricket's always flashing stats up on the screen, last 5 overs, like the average run rate, the batter's bowling average, batting average, all that kind of stuff. You can tell about someone like his batting average is 45. You've got a pretty good idea. You already know about a player, even if you've never heard of him before. As soon as you see his batting average, you're like, that's pretty good. Well, that's pretty bad. So I feel like rugby could do more with that stuff. Even just things like rugby could track the player speeds. When a ball gets bowled in cricket, you can see how many kilometers per hour it was going. So that was a fast one. If they were showing a highlight, they could track, put the little line behind the guy. How fast is he running, the little kilometers per hour as he's going? That wouldn't be that hard for the production teams to add. I think that kind of stuff is fascinating. When you see those foot race videos and they put the player speeds on there, that kind of stuff is fantastic. So I feel like rugby could do more of that stuff. As I said, it doesn't need to be in your face, but it could just be scrolling stats that just go up in the corner under the scores, that kind of thing. Like average meters per carry or, average tackle percentage or all that kind of stuff. Just needs to be subtle, but I feel like it could tell you more about where the momentum is at during the game, just personally. What else? This one, the old UFC. UFC. Again, it's an individual sport rather than a team sport, so it's very different. But man, the UFC markets itself really well. And it kind of leans into the fact that it is a tough sport for tough people. And they often don't like each other that much. They play up to it, the fact. Like, I'm not saying rugby needs to go way overboard and get all Conor McGregor on us. But certainly when you see players and coaches and whatnot speaking about teams that they don't like, they still are so bland. It's it's a bit of a missed opportunity. You want these guys to get out there and crunch each other, absolutely. But they don't really lean into that with rugby. They're trying to keep it very kind of family friendly, keep it very G-rated. I feel like if UFC's on one extreme and the way rugby is at the moment, there's a medium that they could go to. Just push it out a little bit more. I think there's room to go that way without kind of crossing that line of becoming a bit farcical or too theatrical. But yeah, I do think rugby could lean into those rivalries which naturally exist in a physical game between teams looking to dominate each other. It doesn't have to be all be gentlemanly and polite. That being said, you need to market it to different audiences. Here in New Zealand, rugby is not a particularly posh game, so I feel like it could lean into that more. Other parts of the world, it may not. The way it's currently marketed may work perfectly. I'm not sure, but I feel like, as I said, rivalries, could be marketable. Conor McGregor is as famous as he is more for his theatrics, I think, than necessarily his fighting. Obviously, his fighting's a heck of a factor as well, but you know what I mean. Last one I'm going to go with is maybe a bit of a controversial one, but the NFL and just American sports generally. And it's not one that I'm dying to see in rugby more, but they find a lot more opportunities to put ads in the game. And I feel like rugby players and rugby organizations, they don't make as much money as what you feel like they deserve sometimes. Like, if you look at the highest paid rugby players, they're not getting paid anywhere near the money of some other sports like the NFL or like, football, soccer, all that kind of stuff. Rugby pretty low on that extreme, and I feel like part of it's because they don't shove ads down your throat all the time. Rugby's kind of relatively low on the ad front. Maybe that's partly because rugby is often behind a paywall, at least for club competitions, but if you could put a few more ads in the games. This scrum is brought to you by Powerade, the drink supplier of the All Blacks, or something like that. I'm not asking for ads every 2 seconds. Trust me, I don't want to see that. But rugby has a lot of stoppages and room, I think, for ads which don't necessarily break the flow of the broadcast. If that could mean more games get broadcast free to air because there's a little bit more money in the pockets, or if that could mean, players get paid a little bit more for a sport which is often damaging their bodies in ways like, arms and legs and brains. And sometimes, sometimes these guys have to retire because they get that serious injuries. They deserve to make a bit more cash sometimes. So, yeah, I don't know. You guys let us know what your thoughts are. 5 things that rugby could learn from and other sports. As I said, I'm not wanting to change the sport fundamentally, but there's always room for a bit of improvement. You guys let us know what your thoughts are. What other sports do you guys watch? Do you think you wish rugby would do a bit more of that, or anything you think I wish rugby would do a bit less of that? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.